Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Autodesk booth once again. My name is Ken LaRue. I am the Technical Marketing Manager for Smoke, and I'm joined on stage by, I've been pumping them up like crazy every single day, and I'll continue to do it, one of the most talented smoke artists that I have had the pleasure to work with. But not only is Brian a very talented smoke artist, he's also very generous with his knowledge. And what I mean by that is Brian is on all different forums, helping people, posting questions and answering things. And also, a great website, first of all, is premiumbeat.com, just for royalty-free music and so on. In fact, the marketing team of Smoke uses all their stuff. But Brian has a blog on there, and on that blog, he's got tips and tricks, and some great stuff to learn smoke to help people who are just starting off into it. But we invited Brian to come here to NAB with us and show some of the great work he does over at WHTR News in Indianapolis, because Brian is the head compositor and editor. And I'll now turn it over to you, Brian. Tell us what you do.
So basically, I work at WHTR in Indianapolis. We're the NBC affiliate there. It's a local broadcast station. So I tend to do all the promos and commercial work, running through everything pretty much through Smoke. Also do some long form and short form programming stuff, as well as a little bit of show finishing there. So basically anything from 10 seconds to an hour, I pipe through Smoke. Most of my spots I'll get done in about a day, since broadcast is very fast. And here's a little bit of work of
audio for the Mac, please.
Here's a little bit of some of my work.
That looks excellent, Brian.
Thanks.
Walk through some of the workflows and techniques, if you could, to explain what you just showed us.
So basically, you know, like I said, I do all the station promos, and one of the spots that we worked on was for the Super Bowl. When the Super Bowl was in town, we kind of needed to promote our station, and since it was on our air, it was on NBC, so that was a big deal for us. So this is basically a 60-second spot that we created. Let me do it from the top. So this kind of goes through a lot of the editorial that we did.
But this is what we believe. We believe leadership is about setting a higher standard.
I've always believed that if people choose to watch us, they deserve our best.
Leadership is dependable. Leadership is knowing what's important to Hoosiers and being proud to be called one.
There really is something special about growing up here.
I was raised here, went to school here, and now I get to raise my own family here.
Leadership is working harder and caring more.
It's treating people with dignity and respect.
It is born of tradition and built for the future.
Thanks for joining us at Fine.
So it's no coincidence more Hoosiers turn to us. Witness leadership in action. Channel 13 Eyewitness News, Indiana's news leader.
Very nice piece.
So this was basically all shot on Canon 5D, and you know, when I use Smoke as an editor, and I also do all the effects with it. So as you're going through the editorial for a spot like this, I mean, we went out and shot a lot of video. And this is kind of some of the organizational aspects of that. So I basically have folders, you know, just like you would organize in any other edit system, to where I've got clips that I can scrub through. We can kind of go through all the shots that we might want to use, start laying them into the timeline, and work like that. You can do, if you're comfortable working in source and record view, Smoke has that. So you can kind of go through, plug along, pick your shots, and kind of basically, you know, get your editorial done. So the great thing about Smoke is that as you're working on your editorial, you also can think about your effects. So you can kind of work simultaneously. This spot had a look about it when it was shot that sort of has everything in this light, airy, glowy look. So we wanted to sort of capitalize that in the look of the spot and enhance it a little bit. So as we kind of laid through the editorials, you can see the clips down here. Most of these have some sort of effect to them. Sometimes it's usually just a color correct to, you know, enhance it a little bit. Some of them have repositions and adjustments to them. And that's what these are. These are all just timeline effects. So when I need something more, sometimes I can go into what Smoke has is Connect Effects, which is where the node-based compositing is. And Connect Effects, you know, oftentimes when you see it, it's you go into it and you expect to have like all these nodes out there, you know, to do this effect and all these things linked together. Sometimes with Smoke, it doesn't have to be that complicated. I can go through. We had this little glow flash transition that we wanted to use to kind of keep in time with the look. And as you go through this is just like an adjustment layer. So I can create just mark it in and out on a timeline, create an adjustment layer, go into Connect Effects, and inside it's just one node. So all I did was use a glow node. It looks through to the back clip, and I can just adjust the properties of the glow and dial it in and sort of create this transition for it, adjust the colors that need be to kind of give it a stylized look, and just exit back out. It's on the timeline, and it's good to go. So if I want to reuse this, I can easily do that. I can just, if I want, I can copy this later on down the line, and then it'll go ahead and use that same effect there. If I want to save this effect for later on, I can also copy it up, and I can actually drop it into my media library here to save it. It has a little FX tab, and then maybe I can label it as Glow Flash and save that later. I can save it with the project. I can use that same look in other projects. Smoke's very flexible that you can actually work on the timeline, even with simple effects that just do that. Sometimes there's moments where you need to do something a little bit more complicated, and this is an example here. This effect, we basically needed to shoot this old television set with one of our old anchors to kind of bridge the history of our station from our past into our present to where we go into web and online work. So we needed this sort of digital transition, and shot with this laptop, and we did a screen replacement for that. So the first thing we did was go into this effects. If I click and go into Connect Effects, you can see that we basically shot this monitor, and we shot it in this warehouse. But there were some issues when we shot it because it had to be shot in a hurry. There's a paperclip next to the TV. There's this cable here. I mean, if you didn't know any better, you would think that we set this up for this demo, but
it's the real world.
It's
right?
the real world. This actually happened. It's like I got this back and I went, "Didn't you see this paperclip? What were you looking at?"
There's no time to pick it up. We got to shoot and get back.
Exactly. So they had about an hour to kind of get this all done. So I basically just ran this clip into a Paint node, and with Paint you can basically do a recursive clone, and I can choose an offset and just kind of paint out these elements as needed.
And this is the typical work that a normal editor would have to send out to someone else, or else you do it in another application and then bring it back in. Right. And that's the real beauty of Smoke, of what we're trying to talk about. It's all in your timeline. So you have full access to a set of tools that is unprecedented for an editor to have inside of it.
Yeah. So I took a little bit of time, and I cleaned this up, did a little bit better job on that. It actually looks like that. But I just needed to do the one frame. And then we took our anchor that we have here, and you can see that this shot is kind of small. If you look at it here, it's 352 pixels by 264. Basically, I ripped our own history off of YouTube and used it that way. So I pulled
fastest way to get the media.
Yeah, I pulled an MP4 down from YouTube, and I still wanted to give it this old TV look, so Smoke has a nice effects node called Damage that has a lot of presets to where you can kind of set up video to look in different ways. So if I wanted to do bad VTR, I could, put that into that monitor as well and kind of create a look like that where it would be distorted and then come into play.
Typically what other people would buy plugins for, and it's already right in the software.
Correct. All right, so go back into Action. Those sort of feed Action, which is a 3D compositor. And just look at the sources here. This was just a simple 4-point corner pin with a mask built around it, so nothing overly fancy. So once we had that down, went back to the timeline, and we kind of created this digital transition that we needed through another one of Smoke's ConnectFX nodes called Matchbox. And once again, I sort of layered this as an adjustment layer. Go into Matchbox. Once again, just one node. Not everything has to be complicated. I'll show you.
We'll get some complicated.
There's some more complicated stuff later on. But Matchbox is a great little node because it allows you to actually kind of program your own effects. It uses a GLSL shader language that if you know, and there's stuff on the web that you can research that. I'm not a programmer. I'm an editor, so that's kind of a little bit outside my reach. But once again, the Matchbox node has a couple of presets that come in for doing some different things, some twirling, some vignettes, just some different things you can do with OpenGL shader language, which is really it's extremely flexible. But one was dots, and I picked the dots effect, and it gives you parameters down here for grid size and dot size. And so I just kind of created a little digital, dotty transition that gave us what we want. It has dissolves on the back end of it so that it actually dissolves then into the shot below it. And the shot below it is back down here on my editorial. We had this gap here in the editorial, which is why the other shots were above it, because that's where they had to go out and shoot the monitor. We said, okay, we need this here, but I don't have that shot, so I moved on and did the editorial. Laid in the screenshot for the computer, knew that we were going to do a screen replacement, did just another ConnectFX gap effect on top of it. I could have done it on the clip as well, but I tend to be more flexible with doing it on top of things so I can easily change the shot underneath if I need to. Go into ConnectFX. A couple of extra nodes here to do different things. Mainly, they're all just Action nodes as well, but we have our back clip. I went into Action and I loaded in a web page. And then we loaded in our anchor shot as well. Comped them together, did a little,
kind of a pre-comp
web viewer. Yeah, just a pre-comp.
workflow.
I made a pre-comp. That feeds into this Action node. And where we, corner pin the screenshot in there, we added a light so that I could add a little fall-off lighting to it, kind of give it, kind of make it a little bit real as we go into it. And then the coffee drink comes up. You can see that it's something I needed to roto out. I could have done it in this same setup, but I chose not to because the light would also have affected the hand, and I didn't want that. So I just decided just to pipe it into a whole nother action. I mean, the nodes make it so flexible that you can work really any way you want.
Multiple actions going into the end result.
Yep. So then I took this action, and then if you look at the keyer for this setup, you go into it, and I actually just had to do a manual garbage mask and roto work for this. But the thing about it that was a little bit challenging was the edges are very blurry because of the natural motion blur when we shot it. But it's nice because Smoke's garbage masks have the ability to actually turn on the motion blur for the garbage mask as it moves as well. So
to match the movement of the...
Sort of match in, yeah. So you just kind of dial it in and be able to get it to key and clip basically nice and neat on the back end. And then when it all plays back in real time, it looks almost perfect. So like I said, all of this whole spot done in about 2 days. Maybe 2.5 days to really finalize it and get everyone's approval in the station because, it was a Super Bowl spot. Everyone's eyes were going to be on it.
But also being able to stay in one application allowed you to be more creative. You're not fighting multiple applications, managing media. Smoke allows you to stay in one place and get the job done.
There were a couple of other things that we had here, these text effects that came in. They were actually built by our art department, and they were just sent to me as a video file with a mat, and all I had to do was key them, so that was kind of nice. But then we kind of ran into a situation where we wanted to expand the spot and cut it down, but we needed to change this type. They were busy doing other Super Bowl graphics, and they couldn't get to this in time that we needed to make this change. So we ended up, in Smoke, I ended up doing the same effect inside Smoke so that I could recreate it and
change
basically
if you
built change the titling and as we needed to say different things. And I tend to do a lot of motion graphics also in Smoke, which is a little different.
But it can be done.
But it can be done, and I like it because I can sort of stay, once again, all in the same box, do the editorial, say I need this motion graphics effect, and you saw my reel, so there's a lot of that in there. But this all started out with a red frame, garbage mask a triangle, did a little bump displace on it to get some beveled edges for it, fed all that into, along with some other triangle frames, basically into Action, and set this up with these nodes. Here's my little triangles. When you add an axis node to an image, it creates it. And then if you add another one, it creates an instance of it. So I can use one piece of media, connect my 4 points to it that sort of match these 4 points. I laid them out there, logically for me. So when I looked at this later, I knew what I was doing. But then these are all controlled by another access point that I could rotate and do all kinds of crazy things with.
To people who aren't familiar with node-based compositing, this might look confusing, but in all honesty, it's so straightforward because it's connected dots. I mean, you can really dissect and see what you're doing very easily and control multiple layers based on one node.
Sure.
That's really what you're doing here.
Sure, and in other graphics programs like After Effects, which is great, but that's all layer-based. So you've got to copy layers, and real complex After Effects comps have hundreds of layers that are pre-comps and comps within comps, and sometimes it's really hard to see. Working in a node-based workflow like this, you kind of see everything. And it really works, just a nice way to kind of visualize what you're doing and be able to repurpose pieces and parts. So motion graphics, like I said, is something we kind of deal with. And sometimes we actually do a lot of motion graphic spots. This is a very quick 15-second car spot with audio.
Audio on the Mac?
Keep rolling on with Chevy Cruze Eco, offering an EPA-estimated 42 mpg highway, the best highway mileage of any gas engine in America. Test drive one at your Central Indiana Chevy dealer.
All right, so basically it's a car spot. That's what local TV is all about, right? So we do this car spot, and this, we kind of got inspired by a look on another spot online and kind of recreated it and said, hey, we can do all this inside Smoke. It's really just the same shot, just treated different ways, different colors, and just doing some masking for it and wiping things through. It's actually about 15 layers for each of these setups, but each setup, when you looked at it, it repeats. It looks more random than it is. So if I look in the setup for that, then we start getting into things that are a little bit more complicated. This whole setup, I'll show it to you here. Ooh, there you go. That wasn't good. Undo. Is a lot of these little comps put together that all end up in one final result at the end. But each one, like I said, is just a copy kind of the original. So if you just looked at one of these in its entirety, you have an action node, which, like I said, is the 3D compositor. It sort of hubs everything together, all the elements. And we just started with the basics. Created a grid, some slashy lines inside Smoke using paint. We pulled in our footage and linked it up. Then we said, okay, we need a layer of this that's going to be black and white. Okay, and we like the layer, so now we're going to add a blur node, and we're going to make this. We're going to blur that black and white image and feed that. We now took this other, the same shot, we piped it into another action node, combined it with the white lines, and turned it blue and kind of overlaid it and created a aligned version of it. We created some other elements, a line, very fancy. Just a couple of other white frames for different things. Some pointers, some little chevrons that we made with garbage masks, some triangles. We could have animated those as well. I probably would like to have gone back and done that. This spot was actually edited by one of our other editors at the station, Matt Kirchhoff. I'll give a shout out to him. And here's the text for that spot that we could, in a node that we could easily change for each pass. And all 15 of these layers go into action to where you can look at them and see them sort of lined up here just for organization views. But all the little different pieces and parts are there, and you've got the slashes for the masking, and he just went through and animated masks around to wipe the different layers through and created this nice little motion graphics look. Once we had that, it was easy enough to take this entire setup, copy it, and do the other nodes. So you just copy, select everything, right-click, duplicate, then all of this gets copied, and we just moved it down here, basically.
Swap out the footage.
Yep, swapped out the footage, got new footage, swapped out the text, and that fed into another action node, and then those 4 scenes all got combined into the final result. So these are, kind of like pre-comps that we have, but once again, they're all sort of laid out here kind of visually so that we can easily access any of the shots to swap them out.
Show them the Connect Effects node. I like that technique. So the idea here is, as Brian's showing you all these nodes that create the end result. What's great is we can actually right-click just on that end result of the action node and create one node called a Connect Effects node. Basically, it groups all of it, and it also lets you process it prior to doing the end rendering. So when you do the final ending, it's going to be a much faster workflow.
So I just did that. I right-clicked, and as you saw, and we hit Create Connect Effects. It basically spits out this shot. But all kind of it makes a
down
clip.
with that one node.
Now it's a clip.
Yeah.
So the beauty of it is now that this is an actual clip, I can render it in here to kind of speed up rendering later on, or I can look at my sources list and actually move this clip. And if I labeled it as something that would make a little bit more sense, so this would be shot 1 or whatever. If I could spell it, and I could actually copy this into my library now, and use this actually as a clip on the timeline. So that really makes it very flexible that now it's actually sort of a solid clip. If I ever needed to go back and get into this effect again, you just double click on it and highlight the node and then hit explode all, which is kind of a nice little button to hit at times. And it'll just pop that all back out into all the connections and all the effects that built it in the first place.
And this is what you do every single day.
And this is what I do.
But you have branched out a little bit. We have a little story. There's a gentleman named Alexis Herkman who is writing a book on how to use smoke. And he's actually created a film that is going to be part of the book, which is really cool. Well, he reached out to the community through Autodesk to find some smoke artists to help him do the visual effects work. Brian volunteered and has done some amazing stuff with it. So let's just take a quick look at some of the stuff you've been working with Alexis.
Yep. It's basically a sci-fi film, and there's a moment where this time portal opens up in this wall, and this duplicate version of this girl comes out. And this was literally a 50-frame shot. And it was kind of fun because I only had, I'm used to working on a 30-second spot, working 8 hours on it, and having to make some creative compromises based on time because you can only do good, fast, or cheap, and pick 2. And this was kind of fun because I did this at home. I actually did it on my MacBook Pro, and I was able to spend a day or two or over the weekend just finessing 50 frames, which was kind of unique for me, and just to do something that wasn't broadcast and kind of use this film. So put a little creativity together and just started from the basics with the 2 shots that I was given. If you look at this Connect Effects schematic, I tend to do, I'm a big fan of Connect Effects because it's so open and creative. If you look at this one, it'll take a second to load. There you go. So this becomes a lot of nodes. And it looks like, oh my God, how could I ever possibly deal with that or learn that? But you just sort of start out with the basics. I brought in an element that I knew I was going to use for some particles from Particle Illusion, just as a video clip, as a mat. Kind of ran that through an action node so that I could take these and combine them together and make them grow out and build the portal. And from there, I took another horizontal one and combined those together so that I could take once again, here's my little plus layout that I have, so I could take the edges of it, do a little subtraction, and kind of create a square doorway, which is what the director wanted. I kind of thought circles originally, but then he wanted squares. Those are all just get combined together to kind of create the doorway look. We did an edge detect on it to kind of get the more sparkly edges. Here are the plates that were shot, that were given to me. You have the background plates, and then you have her chroma key, so the background would go in there, and she walks through. The background plate needed to have kind of a stylized look, so I ran it through an optics node, which kind of glows it out, and did a little purplish kind of color to it. Then I just ran that through a deform node, which kind of adds this little warpy, wavy look to it as you're kind of looking through this this time portal. That all kind of gets combined then with the key, and I was able to key her out inside Smoke for the first pass anyway, and then the background you can see is behind her, the doorway's being cut, and some of this just keeps getting built out to where she is now. I add some of the other layers, the edge sparkles to the edge of it, and then eventually you get to a point where she starts walking through the door. And you can see here where I just kind of have this set up as garbage mask as she walks through, as different parts of her body kind of cut through all at once. And those kind of go, and if you look at the keyer for that, I just did a simple garbage mask. It's actually not too simple. It's actually multiple garbage masks inside that. But I just started taking individual garbage masks and making them, start from 0 basically, and then building all together so that by the end, I used the mat from her key, and now I've kind of got a complete rotated version of her that different parts come out in different areas. Then we just kind of build all that up. We go into more action nodes. I ended up keying her back on top of herself. This layer also got keyed in there, and added some sparkles to the edges as she breaks through. Then I needed to add a reflection down to the table, so we took the background shot and just laid it down. Then I had to mask it off a little bit, clean up some of the masks, get a little edge, and then was able to do the reflection on the table to kind of sell the look.
So while it was definitely a complicated shot, you can see that all the tools were there, and it's not like you build this in 1 second, but like Brian just demonstrated, each piece, one at a time, he builds it together, then pulls it all back, and more importantly than anything, it's in the timeline. It's tied into the editorial workflow, so if anything has to be changed, you can go in and out back from your timeline into Connect effects.
Exactly. So yeah, it was a fun project to work on. I actually didn't know there was a book being written, so
yeah,
it's kind of my name will be in print. That's kind of neat
You'll
for
be
me.
Even more famous, Brian.
Yep.
So Brian, we want to thank you once again for coming and sharing all the great work you do here in Smoke. If you want to play back your reel one more time, we wrap this up.
Sure.
And stick around. We've got some more stuff coming up right here on the stage with Smoke. We've got Mark and Jan coming up in a second to talk about a workflow of Final Cut 10 and Smoke, which is a great presentation. And all day long, some great booths going on.